It's been a while. I know. It's been far too long. And I owe you guys an explanation, but I don't have a really good one right now, other than the fact that life has been lifing. You know? All right. I think we're good. I think that works. That works. I'm a Clark Atlanta University dad today. Shout out to the HBCU dads. You guys are amazing. Love you, papas. All right, let's do this. Hey everybody, and welcome to another installment of Digging in the Crates, a series brought to you by the Melanated Archives. I'm Kendra Touche, or just Kendra, the creator of the Melanated Archives and co-host of the Melanated Archives podcast. Now, if you're new here, welcome. And if you've been following along for a while, you already know how we dig into the stories that shape the culture of Black theater, television, and film. And today we're doing just that, diving into the incredible, often overlooked story of the African Grove Theater, America's first professional Black theater company. Now, if you're familiar with the Melanated Archives, you know that we've touched on the evolution of Black theater in some of our earlier podcast episodes. We've had conversations with some incredible figures like Mr. Robert Hooks, co-founder of the Negro Ensemble Company, Woody King Jr., the founder of the New Federal Theater. But one thing we didn't dive deep into is the African Grove Theater, a crucial part of our history. So today we're going to go ahead and unpack its rise, its impact, and its ultimate demise, really. Now, it all began in the early 1800s in New York City, back when the United States was still grappling with slavery. While New York had abolished slavery in 1827, chattel slavery was still a painful reality in many parts of the country, even in upstate New York. It was during this turbulent time in 1821 that William Henry Brown, a West Indian playwright and former steward on ships, opened the doors to the African Grove Theater. Now, what makes the African Grove so remarkable is that it wasn't created to entertain white audiences or even seek their validation from the dominant culture. Instead, it was born out of a desire to create spaces for Black audiences where Black actors and playwrights could tell their own stories, showcase their own talents, and celebrate their culture. This was revolutionary. The theater itself was more than just a place for performances. It was a community hub where Black people could come together to invest in their own culture and artistry. Now, fair warning before you go any further into this video. This story probably is more in depth than any other story that I've ever told. Now, while I'll definitely try and keep it concise, meaning that I'm not going to talk your head off all day long, there are a few key players that I want you to keep in mind. Those key players are Brown, Aldridge, and Hewitt. Now, William Henry Brown wasn't just the founder of the African Grove, he was also a playwright in his own right. He wrote plays, some of which were performed at the theaters. Now, William Brown was born in 1790 in St. Croix, one of the islands of the Danish West Indies, now the U.S. Virgin Islands. And his early life was shaped by the colonial context of the Caribbean. His experiences in the West Indies likely influenced his later passion for fighting against oppression and injustice, themes that become central in his later works as a playwright and ultimately a theater founder. Now, before embarking on his journey in theater, Brown worked as a steward on ships, which was a common occupation for free Black men in this era. His maritime work exposed him to diverse cultures and a variety of social dynamics, helping him develop a global perspective that would inform his later artistic and political vision. After his career on the sea, Brown ultimately moved to New York City, where he became involved in the city's early theater scene. He saw the lack of opportunities for Black actors and playwrights and recognized the need for a theater that could serve as a platform for Black people to tell their own stories and document their own lives. Now, Brown's most notable contributions to the arts was his creation of the African Grove Theater, which opened in 1821. But Brown wasn't alone in this movement. Alongside him were other notable figures like James Hewlett, one of the first Black actors to perform on the stage of the African Grove Theater, and Ira Aldridge, another renowned actor who eventually found fame on the European stage. Now, these two men weren't just actors, they were also symbols of resistance. The theater itself was a statement. Black talent, artistry, and culture had value, and the African Grove was proof of that. Now, Ira Aldrich was a pioneering Black actor who is often regarded as one of the greatest Shakespearean actors of his time. Although Aldrich was born in the United States in 1807, he moved to England in the early 1820s, where he received significant success. Now, Aldrich is particularly known for being the first African American to perform in major European theaters and to play roles such as Othello and King Lear. Now, he joined the African Grove Theater in the early 1820s and is believed to have performed in several productions there, including Richard III and Othello. Aldrich's involvement in the theater was part of the early wave of Black actors in the United States who helped to push boundaries and establish Black theater in the face of significant adversity. James Hewlett was another important figure in the African Grove Theater's early days. He was one of the first African American actors to perform regularly at the theater, and he performed in several of its productions. Hewlett was a key member of the company and helped to bring its mission to life. He performed works by Shakespeare and other playwrights and was involved in the African Grove's attempt to establish a professional theater space for Black performers. For a brief but significant period, the African Grove Theater flourished. It became a space where Black theater artists could hone their craft, and its performances attracted a growing, devoted Black audience. People came not just to be entertained, but to witness a new cultural movement that was shifting the narrative of Black people in America. The performances featured Black actors in lead roles, challenging the norms of the time. They presented plays that showcased the richness of Black life, which was a radical departure from the stereotypical depiction of Black people on the stage. Let me pause there for a moment and just say that I personally hate the word radical. Is it really radical if you're doing what comes naturally? What should be given to you naturally? What should be offered to you naturally? I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about that, but that's how it was described back then. It was viewed as being a radical movement for Black people to move in their own spaces, to do what they wanted to do, and to create things for themselves. William Brown initially founded the African Grove Theater actually in the back of his own house. The first performances took place in a small makeshift venue located in the rear of his residence at 227 There's No Place Like Home Theater Alley in Lower Manhattan, a narrow street off of Pearl Street. Now, this location was chosen due to its proximity to the Black community, and it was here that Brown and his company began their performances. At the time, New York was deeply segregated, and white theaters were openly discriminatory towards Black actors and audiences, making the establishment of the African Grove an act of defiance and cultural empowerment. Now, as the theater gained popularity, it of course faced increasing challenges from hostile white neighbors. And its patrons were often subject to ridicule and abuse. Now, eventually, the African Grove Theater became mobile, moving around to various locations within the city. And for several years, the company performed in different spaces, but the harassment continued to follow them. Now, eventually, the African Grove Theater moved into a new location on 34th Street, closer to the Park Theater, which was an all-white theater space, which put them in direct competition with this established white theater space. It was here that the theater finally met its tragic end. Now, the story of African Grove Theater's struggles with harassment and eventual destruction is marked by one particular figure, Stephen Price, the white owner of the nearby Park Theater. Now, Price, who was the producer of the Park Theater, saw the African Grove Theater as a direct threat to his business and reputation. He was particularly upset by the growing success and cultural importance of the Black-run theater. It wasn't just the proximity to his own theater that bothered him, but the fact that the African Grove was gaining significant attention and support within the Black community, something that the Park Theater did not have access to. In an effort to undermine the African Grove Theater, Park orchestrated a campaign of disruption. He hired white rowdies to create disturbances at the theater. Now, these hired troublemakers would go to the African Grove, causing chaos, yelling, and essentially trying to provoke a riot. Their goal was to ruin the experiences for the audiences there and to create such a ruckus that the theater's reputation would be harmed. In addition to the financial and logistical challenges, one of the cultural battles that William Henry Brown faced while running the African Grove Theater was managing the behavior of some of the white patrons who came to see the performances there. Now, despite the theater's focus on Black audiences, the African Grove did attract some white visitors. I mean, hello, especially because it was one of the only venues in New York City showcasing our Black selves. Performances by Black actors and dramatists. However, some of the white patrons behaved in such a rowdy and disruptive manner that it led Brown to take a significant and symbolic step to maintain order and dignity inside of his theater. Now check this out. To preserve the atmosphere of respect and focus on the performances, Brown took the bold move of designating a special seating arrangement for white patrons, requiring them to sit in the balcony away from the main floor. The seating policy was not just a practical decision, but also a statement to Black autonomy and resistance. Going back to Stephen Price and others in the white community, they themselves began to complain to the police, claiming that the African Grove was causing disorder in the neighborhood. Now, this pressure accumulated in the eventual intervention of the police, who shut the theater down. And eventually in 1823, a mob led by white theatergoers, and some in collaboration with the Park Theater personnel, set a fire to the African Grove Theater, burning it to the ground and destroying everything in it. Some recounted that it was destroyed under mysterious circumstances, believed to be arson. Many historians believe that Price's influence and the hostility from the surrounding white community played a significant role in the destruction. The African Grove Theater's battle to exist against the backdrop of racial violence, economic hardship, and systematic racism was a testament to the resilience and spirit of Black theater and its creators, like William Henry Brown, who believed in the power of art to affirm and celebrate Black identity. William Henry Brown didn't stop. His vision for Black theater had ignited a movement. And though the African Grove was gone, Brown continued to fight for the advancement of Black artists and playwrights. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to fully see the fruits of his labor. Brown passed away in 1884, but his role in shaping Black theater cannot be overstated. The building itself may have been burned down to the ground, but its spirit lives on in every Black actor, every Black playwright, and every Black director who continues to fight for their rightful place in the theater world. I think that there is something so powerful about people who continue to press on. And if we can ignite that once again in ourselves and have unity once again in our culture, and I don't want to say not look to the past, because I think the past is very important. I think that it's a good thing to have a reference point of how things are or how they have been, right? Like, I look at this story and I hear, even more so than the destruction itself, I hear a story of resilience. I hear groundbreaking evidence of what it looks like when we focus on ourselves and when we work on ourselves, not only as a group of people, but as individuals. For me, history is an important aspect of who we are. And in an effort to not repeat the same things, in an effort to learn from our past, I believe that it's important that we document and that folks share these stories, that we know these stories, that we write them down, that we take pictures, that we do videos, that we have something tangible from the past, just in case we need a reminder of how strong we are, what we've come through, and where we can possibly go. And that's it. That's it for today's episode of Digging in the Crates. I hope you learned something new about the African Grove Theater and the incredible trailblazers behind it. Make sure that you subscribe, follow us on our social media platforms, wherever they may be, And check out the Melanated Archives podcast, link in the description below, for more stories like this. I'm Kendra Touche, and I'll see you very, very soon. Peace.